Nestled amid the Sydney landscape, a castle once stood, as a beacon of architectural splendor and beauty. Remembered now by less and less people, this imposing structure, nearing mythical status, bore witness to the rise of the Cape Breton steel industry, 2 world wars, and decades of change from its ostentatious beginnings to its sorrowful end by fire one night in 1966. Today, only its gatehouse and parts of a wall remain. And I was granted access to this silent sentinel of the past, where it sits empty, photographed by tourists, perhaps waiting for its next tenant. Join me on a tour of the empty gatehouse through the history of one of Sydney's most memorable structures. This is the story of Moxham Castle. Welcome to a new episode of Abandoned Cape Breton, where I solo explore, film, and document our many abandoned places. I've been waiting to tell this story for some time, and I'm glad the day is finally here to tell the story of this long-lost Cape Breton gem. The story of Moxham Castle begins in Glamorganshire, South Wales, in 1854, with the birth of Arthur James Moxom. As a young man of 15 years, he immigrated to the United States and began working in the early steel industry in Louisville, Kentucky. After some time, the innovative Arthur Moxom, now an iron master, was hired to design, build, and manage a steel plant in Birmingham, Alabama. His knowledge, skill, and reputation as a steelmaker, including his own designs and patents on wrought iron, reached illustrious status. By 1893, he had ascended to the presidency of the Lorain Steel Company in Ohio. In Lorain, Ohio, Helen Moxom would be rewarded with the home of her dreams. Well, a castle, to be exact. Moxom had always harbored a dream to one day sail around the world in his personal yacht. When it came time to retire in 1899, he did just that. This trip would prove fortuitous for the history of Sydney because of a chance encounter with H.M. Whitney of Boston in New York. Think of the Pier Deer, Whitney Pier, that is. Whitney proposed a business venture that would bring Arthur Moxom out of retirement and to Sydney, Cape Breton, where the Dominion Iron and Steel Corporation would hire him to help build and manage the Sydney steel plant. As the story is told, if you believe it, Helen Moxom was so upset at leaving the castle in Ohio that Arthur had it deconstructed and shipped to Cape Breton, where it was rebuilt stone for stone along Sydney Harbor. The unromanticized truth, however, is both the Moxoms loved their home in Ohio so much, they decided to build the outer stone form in Sydney, and only the interior was shipped at a cost of about 150% of the price required to build the stone shell. The outer structure in Lorain was converted to a rest home before being dismantled in 1924 to make way for a junior high school. Some of the stone was used to build a grocery store, and also some was used in the construction of a house for an executive at the steel plant. So, our famous Cape Breton version was built with local materials, not brought over from Scotland or whatever rumor you heard. Regardless, the price Arthur paid for building it twice in a decade was certainly an expensive project of love and devotion to Helen Moxom. Arthur and Helen's showpiece mansion was the jewel of Sydney. If it looked out of place, that's because it was a replica of a medieval clan castle with 2 towers, 7 chimneys, and 14 fireplaces, built at the turn of the 20th century in Sydney, Nova Scotia, of all places. The property ran from the water across King's Road to Newlands Avenue, over to the site of St. Rita's Hospital, and down again to the harbour. Today, 2 streets in this tract of land run down King's Road: Moxom and Castle, adjacent to the brook that once ran through the property. Along the water was a full-size wharf and boathouse, where Moxom had kept his 2 yachts. The grounds of the castle were all landscaped. There grew currants, berries, and a host of other fruits. An orchard at the back of the castle yielded harvests of apples, plums, and pears. The castle greenhouse cultivated flowers and bushes for replanting on the grounds. It is described by Pat O'Neill as overlooking Sydney Harbour. A large stone-pillared porch led into an enormous foyer adorned with great stained glass windows, and a 45-foot ceiling surrounded by carved mahogany paneling. In the center of the foyer, carved griffins with their eagle heads and lion bodies stood guard on the banister posts of the elegant semicircular stairway. Because the front of the house faced the harbour, visitors would be let out of their carriages under an archway at the back, ushered into a hallway with the coat rooms, and then led up a stairway to the second floor and a great hall at the front. Of the layout, the main floor had a kitchen, butler's pantry, breakfast nook, library, living room, den, 2 dining rooms, and 2 coat rooms. The floors above included 13 bedrooms, a billiard room, and a sewing room. Among the interior transported from Ohio were heavy carved furniture, rich carpeting and tapestries, and fine wood paneling. In addition to the creepy wine cellars, the lavish home had large crystal chandeliers, a huge ballroom, a solarium, 30 rooms, and 2 large steam furnaces. To one side of the front door, a glassed-in conservatory housed a fish pool and fountain, surrounded by lush greenery and flowers. Between the conservatory and the front door was a small bird sanctuary. Throughout its storied history, Moxham Castle was home to several families. The amount of wealth attributed to the owners of the castle over its short history is staggering. From a steel baron, to a major contractor and supply owner, to a shipping merchant, all have been owners of this majestic estate. The Moxoms, unfortunately, didn't stay very long in Sydney. Their son, Thomas, while working as the supervisor during construction of the steel plant, was killed by a train in the rail yard. He was waked in the castle's great hall. Only 2 months later, Thomas's wife, Ellen, and their newborn son both died in childbirth. Managing the steel plant had suddenly lost its flavor for Arthur, and the Moxoms returned to the States in 1902, strangely leaving many of their belongings in the castle that had been shipped there at quite an expense. During this difficult time, Frank Widener and his wife tended to the castle and its grounds. The Moxoms retained the property and would visit Sydney occasionally for a few months each year until the Great War. Arthur Moxom died in Long Island, New York, in 1931. During the First World War, around 1917, Moxom had donated the castle to the Canadian government as a military hospital for returning veterans, and it was a rest home and recuperation area for many wounded soldiers. After the war, the Moxoms sold the castle to Melbourne Russell, M.R. Chappell, in 1922. His family had moved to Sydney in 1901, and M.R. became general manager of Chappell Brothers in 1910. Chappell Brothers was a lumber supply and contracting company. He served on the executive of many local and national service clubs and organizations, and was an alderman in Sydney from 1924 to 1928. Chappell purchased Oak Island in Lunenburg County in the 1930s, and was associated with the search for the alleged buried treasure there until his death in 1981. It wasn't unusual in the 1930s and 40s for rum runners from Newfoundland and St. Pierre to stash their liquor on the property. During the rum running years of the 40s, Moxham Castle was a focus for law enforcement raids. Sometimes they found the stash, other times they didn't. In 1945, the castle was sold again, this time to local merchant W.N. Went MacDonald, who lived in the castle longer than any other owner. Went MacDonald happens to be my personal connection to this story, as he was the great-granduncle to my wife. Went was a prominent figure in Nova Scotia, known for his business ventures in shipping and mining, particularly in the Inverness area, where he had a positive impact on the community development. At one time, Went owned the largest fleet of merchant vessels in Canada. He was the president of the Margaree Steamship Company and had other firms that provided steamship services between Newfoundland, Halifax, Boston, and various ports in Cape Breton, Prince Edward Island, and eastern Nova Scotia. He was heavily associated with companies that operated mines in Inverness, Port Hood, and Mabou, and was known for his down-to-earth, personable approach to business, interacting directly with the workforce. Like Arthur Moxom, Went MacDonald was a business prodigy from an early age. Getting a start in real estate at the age of 17, his kind and generous nature earned him respect from those he worked with. Coincidentally, he likely ran the ferry service in Sydney Harbour that Moxom himself used daily when building the steel plant. Went died in 1960, and his wife, Margaret Ann, died a year later. With no one living in the castle, it became a derelict property. The municipality had tried to auction it for taxes owed. There was some interest from Sandy Reeves, but nothing really came of it. After sitting vacant for several years and suffering a great deal of damage from vandals, Moxham Castle was destroyed by fire in 1966. During the Chappell years, Bill Gentile grew up living in what was originally a laundry and servants' quarters, the gatehouse, with his family. Bill's father remodeled the building into a comfortable 3-bedroom home for his family, which has remained largely unchanged since then, save for some modern upgrades. Years later, Bill bought the gatehouse of the castle and lived in it for 17 years, past the time of Went MacDonald. His memories of Moxham Castle are happy memories of a young boy living a real-life adventure with a 30-room castle and a 130-acre park as his playground. This relic of the past now stands alone, a poignant reminder of the castle's former glory. Granted special access, I can show you the inside of the gatehouse as it sits today. The first thing to greet you through the side door is the smell of the furnace oil, hinting at some of the reasons it sits empty. The inside, for the most part, looks modern. Look closer, and you can see a few special features aside from the outside stonework that you likely won't find in your home, such as the lead rods in the windows, the strange tower-shaped rooms, large chimney toppers waiting to be reinstalled, a window in the middle of a chimney, and this large, oddly angled staircase leading to the bedrooms that gives one a sense of vertigo when standing at the top. Thank goodness for the railings. Some of the furniture and a few belongings of the last tenant weren't removed, and were scattered throughout the house during my visit. Exploring the gatehouse, one can sense the echoes of history within its walls. While some of the exterior walls are beginning to give way, unfortunately, and may soon crumble, the bones of the structure are good. The gatehouse serves as a tangible link to the past, preserving the essence of Moxham Castle for future generations, or for as long as it lasts. Perhaps this is another building in the Sydney area that deserves another look for historical status and protection. The existence of Moxham's Castle came to a devastating end one fateful night in 1966. The fire was likely started by vandals, who at that time frequented the castle on a regular basis. Given the weight of the crime in the minds of Cape Bretoners, it will likely never be common knowledge who was involved. It's the kind of information one keeps buried. The once majestic castle was reduced to smoldering ruins, its heritage and grandeur consumed by the flames. Bill Gentile, living in the gatehouse at the time, describes seeing the fire that night from his bedroom window, which faced the castle.
I was going to bed, and I saw a little flicker. I assumed it was from a car, and I went to bed. But it was on my mind, and eventually I got up and looked again, and I saw a tiny flame flickering in the window. There were tunnels running through the top floor and attic so you could get in to bring up the chandelier. The fire started in one of the tunnels, but the fire department couldn't find where it was located.
There were many eyewitnesses to the fire that night. One of them saw firefighters making off with furniture from the castle. At one point, a large crash was heard as the billiards table, located on an upper floor, crashed through to the ground. It's difficult to tell what happened to much of the surviving furniture and trinkets from the castle that night. Many people claim to have things from the castle. Maybe they do. But who knows? What you can say with certainty, this whole event was not a pleasant moment for the heritage of Sydney. The memory of Moxham's Castle, however, would endure for those who had walked its halls and gazed upon its magnificent structure. After the fire, much of the remaining stone was used in the rebuilding of the fortress of Louisbourg, which was, and still is, the largest historical reconstruction in North America. The Cabot House, built in 1970 on the Moxham Castle site, though has seen better days and is now developing the vacant commercial spaces into new living units, and is the tallest building in Cape Breton. Other than the gatehouse and wall, there is nothing here to indicate a castle estate once stood on this land. I hope any myth-busting I've done here hasn't diminished the castle in any way for you. It was a remarkable structure with a great story. Today, Moxham's Castle site is now the Cabot Tower, and Sydney community has embraced its memory, ensuring that the story of Moxham's Castle is not forgotten. And indeed, much of it is already turned into legend. The tale of Moxham's Castle is one of grandeur, one of love, of tragedy, and enduring myth. From its construction and illustrious owners to its heartbreaking demise by fire, the castle's story is woven into the tapestry of Sydney, and like a fine wine, becomes more fantastic with age. Although the main structure may no longer stand, the gatehouse continues to serve as a curiosity and reminder of Moxham's Castle. Through photos, illustrations and paintings, in songs and stories passed around Cape Breton's kitchen, the spirit of Moxham's Castle lives on, forever etched in the annals of Sydney's heritage. Thank you for watching this episode of Abandoned Cape Breton. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like. That really helps the channel be seen by more folks like you. Where will I go next on this beautiful island, known for its stunning landscapes and rich history? Do you know of any other places you'd like me to explore? Let me know in the comments, and your suggestion could be my next episode. Join me next time as we embark on a journey to uncover the mysteries hidden within Abandoned Cape Breton.